Week 14 fantasy football. It starts tonight. Make sure you get your lineup set. Jeff Pasquino from thefootballguys.com is here to answer your fantasy football questions. Send us a text with your fantasy questions, 609-403-0973. We got Jacksonville. We got Tennessee. If you're a fantasy guy, Jeff, are you excited for tonight?
No, not really. Unless you got the Titans defense, maybe Fournette. I would say Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith are marginal plays at best. All 6 teams are back in action. You probably for many this is a playoff game in fantasy for a lot of leagues, or it might be the last game of the regular season, or like your league, Mike, you're playing all the way to the end. But it's an important game nonetheless. But Fournette, maybe Davis, and the Titans defense for tonight.
Okay, I see the text message is already coming in. They're in the playoffs. They need your help. 609-403-0973. Let's start off with the quarterbacks and take a look at some names to play or sit this weekend. All right, we're in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson against Kansas City.
Yeah, I think he's a borderline QB1. I think you're going to hope that he runs. Well, he's going to run a lot. Kansas City does give up a lot of yards. Their defense can be a little stout, but they score a lot of points. Look what Oakland did last week. They scored 33. You would expect that out of the Raiders, but I think this game is going to be a sneaky, higher scoring game, like a 31-24 type game. I think the Ravens might be able to hang in there, but Lamar Jackson is probably going to make a few mistakes, but usually he'll score enough points and touchdowns to offset a turnover or two.
All right, let's go to fantasy playoffs. Tom Brady.
Yeah, Tom Brady this week, not the best option. I think that he's playing at Miami. That's a tough one because on the road it sounds good. The weather's usually good, but the Patriots like to mix it up and run the ball more than they throw. I think you'll see Gronkowski find the end zone. There's one for Brady, maybe Josh Gordon for 2, but I think 250 yards and 2 touchdowns is about where Brady's going to be. Maybe a rushing yard or 2, so he tries to stay over 1,000 yards. But he's right next to Lamar Jackson on our rankings.
What about let's go with Matt Ryan, Green Bay. You got marquee quarterbacks Rodgers and Ryan. You go with Matt Ryan on the road if you need a fantasy playoff win.
I'd roll the dice with him. I think that the Green Bay defense is really suspect. They're going to try and play up for whomever's coaching this week. But Green Bay is really falling apart. Atlanta's defense is bad, but Green Bay is giving up a lot of points too. So I think you're looking at, as long as the weather holds up and it's not too frigid, and it doesn't appear to be on the forecast, I think you're seeing a lot of points scored in Green Bay this week.
All right, one more quarterback for Jeff. We'll move over to the running backs after this. What about Kirk Cousins at Seattle?
Yeah, that's a tougher matchup. I mean, Seattle's defense is not what it used to be, but still Minnesota's. I think they're both their receivers a little banged up. Thielen's playing well, but they cover him a lot because Diggs is a little banged up. Although we found Rudolph some, so I think they're spreading the ball around. Yeah, you get Dalvin Cook who's caught plenty of balls. I think that Kirk Cousins is maybe a quarterback too. He's not a QB1 this week. It's a little bit tougher on the road.
All right, Jeff Pasquino from thefootballguys.com answering your Week 14 fantasy football questions. If you have a fantasy question for Jeff, send us a text, 609-403-0973. Jeff will give you some of his favorite plays, some sleepers, some waiver wires coming up in just a minute. We'll also move over to the running backs now. What are you doing with Philip Lindsay? I know people we were talking about him. Is he a Rookie of the Year candidate now? Is he a guy that's a must-play?
Well, we were talking about it among the staff today. I think that he's probably the number one pickup and number one waiver wire guy that you could have had this year after week 1 or after the drafts were over, I think. And he's proven worth it. He gets better each week. Now Denver, they just suffered that horrible loss of Emmanuel Sanders tearing up his ankle, and he's done for the year. He's on the IR. So they're going to have to rely on Lindsey. They're going to have to rely on running the ball a lot, even though you have the tight end in the mix. But I think that Philip Lindsey is going to see a lot more work. And against San Francisco, who's also lost a running back, I think that you're going to see Philip Lindsey is a running back 1 for sure, top 10 this week.
What are you doing in Kansas City?
Well, you're rolling out the Spencer Ware, hoping for the best. But they are mixing the ball around. They scored 40 points last week, so they got plenty of production. But they are going to mix it around a little bit. You've got Spencer Ware, and if you weren't able to pick him up, you can look down towards not Kendrick West, but I think there's another guy who Damian Williams. Finally found him on the list. Damian Williams he's a speedster. He's seen enough touches to be relevant. they may start to work him in and try to tune him up for the postseason.
All right, you got some interesting guys here. We know the top guys: Gurley, McCaffrey, Zeke, Barkley, Kamara. Boy, you get to the playoff times and you say, all right, Aaron Jones, the team's not very good, got a new coach. What are you doing there?
I think we have him in the top 10 this week. Atlanta is a terrible defense against running backs for sure, especially against pass-catching running backs. Aaron Jones is seeing the bulk of the work, and Green Bay really needs to right itself and get some stability there. So a running game will go a long way towards that. I think Aaron Jones has a big week this week.
Nick Chubb, you got the Cleveland running back, had a big week last week versus Carolina. You like Nick Chubb?
He's also a top 10 candidate this week. I think that's a big game. I'm not terribly surprised, but I'm a little surprised that Cleveland's an underdog at home again. I think Cleveland's got a shot this week. Carolina, I just can't get a solid read on them. This is when I think they're a playoff team. They go and lose 4 in a row. So,
all right, Gus Edwards playing Kansas City. What are you doing with that Baltimore situation at running back?
Well, again, Oakland scored 33 points on them last week. Not all of them were quality points because they had some come into late end, but Gus Edwards, I would get a lot of Ravens out there. Gus Edwards is going to see plenty of touches, probably 20-plus carries, not too much in the receiving game, but I think Gus Edwards is a solid running back, borderline running back, too, with some flex option. I think he has touchdown upside for certain this week.
Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com, answering your Week 14 fantasy football questions. I see a boatload of questions in, so we'll cut the receivers a little short so we can get to more of your questions here. Let's throw a couple your way. How about Mike Evans against New Orleans? That game interests me a lot because New Orleans lost to them in Week 1, but this game is in Tampa, so a lot of high scoring, I would imagine.
Yeah, Tampa Bay is one of the worst defenses in the league from start to finish this year. The Saints have actually gotten pretty good the last 3 or 4 weeks. They were right there with Dallas last week, held them to 13 points. Unfortunately, the offense couldn't get rolling, and they had a terrible first half. But I think that Mike Evans is going to have I think Tampa Bay and New Orleans, all those guys, get them both out there. And again, Mike Evans has to see the bulk of the work because Deshaun Jackson's out again.
Mari Cooper taking on this Eagles team. You like Cooper this week?
Yes, I think we're going to see a lot of the replay of what we saw the first matchup. I think Golden Tate is another great spot start, but I think they're going to see a little bit. When divisional teams play the second time, you see a little bit more trickery, a little bit more secondary guys because the defenses know who to key on. So while I like all the starters, I do think there's going to be a little bit of surprises in that contest.
Courtland Sutton, I get a lot of questions about him. I had him on my bench last week. Bad move by me.
Well, this is the week to get him out here and probably going forward because he's the new number 1 wide receiver in Denver because Emmanuel Sanders is now out. So, like it or not, Courtland Sutton, he was supposed to replace Demaryius Thomas, which he did, but he's not ready to be an NFL wide receiver 1. Even worse, you've got Deshaun Hamilton is going to be a guy I was going to mention earlier or later, that he's a sleeper pickup. Deshaun Hamilton for Denver, he's probably going to get the start out of the slot and be the wide receiver 2 in that offense. Also, Matt Lacoste is going to see more targets for Denver. They're going to mix it around and get anybody they can out there because they're running thin on candidates to touch the ball.
All right, let's get some questions from our listeners. 609-403-0973. Send us a text for Jeff Pasquino from thefootballguys.com. With Melvin Gordon hurt, I have to choose between Josh Adams or Justin Jackson.
Well, I'm going to go with more touches, so I'm going to go with Josh Adams. Justin Jackson's a solid candidate, but he's going to split time with Eckler.
Help me, please. That's the text message. Tom Brady or Matt Ryan?
Matt Ryan.
PPR, pick one. Kenyon Drake, Josh Adams, Nadeem Hines, or Marlon Mack?
Colts are playing they're playing against the Texans, so I'd scratch them. I would go with Adams in that list.
All right, Josh Adams, another big vote for him. Gurley or Kamara? Very tough choice.
I would have both of them in. I don't know what kind of lineup that is, but both of them are top 5 options. You can't go wrong.
Mariota or Cousins?
Ooh, I would probably lean towards Cousins. Mariota's far too up and down.
Trubisky or Deshaun Watson?
Oh, I like Deshaun Watson, but if you're looking for home run upside and get a lot for rushing, maybe Trubisky, but I think Watson's a much better candidate to have a top 10 finish this week.
All right, what about Luck or Lamar Jackson?
I like Luck. I mean, he had a terrible week against Jacksonville, but it's Jacksonville. So I think Luck bounces back in Houston and puts up a solid game.
Chris Thompson or Josh Adams?
Again, more volume. I go with Josh Adams.
Jameis Winston or Kirk Cousins?
Jameis Winston is actually a sneaky top 5 quarterback this week. Against the Saints. He's going to throw some picks, but he's going to throw some touchdowns too, and he's probably going to get 400 yards.
Josh Gordon or Courtland Sutton?
Ooh, yeah, well, this is more about volume. I don't think that Miami's got some banged up secondary, that's for sure. But Gordon's not on the field enough. I would go with Courtland Sutton as the wide receiver 1. He's going to get probably 10 targets this week.
Yeah, that Gordon trade hasn't really worked out the way people had hoped, myself included.
Wait for January. I have a sneaky suspicion that Belichick is just waiting to release Gordon at that time.
All right, Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. Let's get some guys that you like this week.
Well, a couple guys we haven't mentioned. Jalen Samuels is the top pickup this week at running back for the Steelers, but he's also tight end eligible in some leagues like Yahoo. So he's a sneaky pickup and sneaky play if you play DFS or any other of those type games for Yahoo at the tight end spot. Also, Stephen Ridley has been picked up there. They're probably going to split time for Pittsburgh this week. The other running back that is definitely a solid pickup this week is Jeff Wilson for the 49ers. Denver's not a great matchup, but with Matt Breida out, Jeff Wilson is definitely your top option out there. As far as wide receivers, again, pretty thin list this time of year. We mentioned both the situation out in Denver. Tim Patrick is going to be the wide receiver 3 out there. He's looking really, really deep. And I would definitely look for Chris Godwin to have a good game for Tampa Bay against the Saints with Deshaun Jackson out. And also Matt Lacoste for Denver. Denver needs all the hands they can get.
All right, there you go. Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com answering your Week 14 fantasy football questions. And, of course, make sure you get everybody back in. You know what happened to me last week, Jeff? We're sitting here having this conversation, which is about the time I try to set my lineups. Well, Drew Brees was in because Mahomes had the bye. I never put Mahomes back in because Brees played on Thursday night, and I had 39 points from Mahomes sitting on my bench.
Ouch. Well, enjoy the game tonight if you're watching it. Good night, though, to skip it, go shopping, take your significant other out. But other than that, enjoy the games, everybody.